This week on Inside the Headset, we are featuring Andrew Heffler, the wide receiver coach and special teams coordinator at Culver-Stockton. Coach Heffler discusses his start in coaching, convention experience, and the transition of being a defensive player to now an offensive coach. If you like this podcast, make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch new episodes each week. Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Heffler.
Coach, what's going on, man? How are you?
Thanks for having me on, Coach Price. You know, I started listening to this podcast when I was a senior in college, getting ready to coach college football. So I've always had this dream to be on. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, man, that's awesome. I didn't realize you've been a long time listener, man, especially as a student athlete, probably transitioning into the game. So hopefully, some of the guys we brought on and some of the stories were helpful in your career as you kind of move forward, and maybe could have learned from some of those guests that we had on. But yeah, that's probably a good place to start with. You had a very successful high school career and playing career at Pomona Pitzer. During this time, who inspired you? Where did the motivation to come from for you to want to be a ball coach? To know your senior year that you need to be listening to this podcast. When did you know you wanted to be a ball coach?
So every summer, when I was a student athlete at Pomona Pitzer colleges. So Pomona and Pitzer are both two separate colleges that combine into one college football program. So the colleges, there's 5 different colleges on one campus located in Claremont, California. So every summer I went back. I'm originally from San Diego, California. I went back home. I would train in the morning, and then I would volunteer my time during the speed and strength camp at St. Augustine High School, my alma mater. And I was very blessed with my head high school football coach, Coach Richard Sanchez. He allowed me to do that several summers in a row. And I just got the inkling to, want to be a ball coach, which is pretty impressive. I talked to my head college football coach at Pomona Pitzer, Coach John Walsh, who recruited me out of high school. He really sold the mission of turning around a historically losing program at Pomona Pitzer. Pomona and Pitzer are two of the top academic schools in the country. They're in the top 30 academic schools in the country. And, historically, as a football program, they've struggled over the years. I think when I was going through as a recruit, I saw over the span of 7 years, they won a total of 2 games, something like that. And Coach Walsh really sold me on, hey, this is my vision. Here's how we're going to change it. We're going to do it the right way. And I want to win here, and I want you to be part of that class, along with everyone else in that class. And I was really inspired by that. And it kind of just allowed me to make the right decision to be a student athlete and play at Pomona Pitzer. And then I realized, junior year of college, I decided, hey, I love being involved in the game of college football. I think this is awesome. And so I asked Coach John Walsh, how can I get involved? How can I get my foot in the door in college football? And he said, Great question. We need your help during our West Coast Elite Camp this Saturday. Perfect. You can be here? Awesome. Be here at 6. So I got to volunteer at our huge West Coast Elite Camp where we have a ton of different top academic schools across the country, all on our campus, which is awesome. I got to network. I got to meet a lot of different coaches. But then I wanted to go further on how I could get involved in college football. So I met some coaches there. I wanted to get connected. And so I asked my head coach, hey, what else can I do to get involved? And he said, you can help us in the recruiting department. So the crazy part about Pomona Pitzer is there's only 2 full-time coaches at Pomona Pitzer. It's crazy. So it's the head coach, Coach John Walsh, and then the offense coordinator, Coach Brian Carroll. And they had, of course, assistant coaches, but no GAs, no restricted earnings, anything. So I was a work study student, and I helped them in the recruiting department. I also helped with, hosting recruits, overnight visits as well. And, my coaches really trusted my input if a kid was the right fit for our program. And they would ask me, hey, how did this guy do at night? Hey, would he be a great fit in our program? And that just kind of really inspired me, to, want to be a college football coach. And then I asked my head coach again, what is the best way for me to get my foot in the door? I'm doing a lot of recruiting. I'm helping out. What is the best way to get my foot in the door in college football? I want to do this for a living. He said, Heff, if you can recruit, you can go anywhere. And so I really got sold on, hey, recruiting is everything in college football. And so I continued to help at Pomona Pitzer. And then I decided, what is the best thing for me going forward? Because we didn't have a graduate assistant program since it's a small Division III liberal arts college. We did not have a graduate assistant program.
Yeah.
So I decided to go to the AFCA convention in Nashville all by myself.
Okay.
Not knowing a soul there, classic suit and tie, business card, looking for logos, making sure, hey, my name's Andrew Heffler. Okay, cool. Yeah. We'll talk soon. And then I was at a loss. I had no meeting set up, no interview set up or anything. And then all of a sudden, the guy I used to play against, because we had a very unique rivalry, is called the 6th Street rivalry game. So Pomona and Pitzer combined for their athletics. Claremont McKenna College, Harvey Mudd College, and Scripps College all combined for their athletic programs. And so we played against Claremont Mudd Scripps. It's pretty unique rivalry. So it's always the last game of the season. The away team warms up at their own stadium and then walks across the street to the home team stadium. And the winner gets the big 6th Street trophy. It's pretty unique. And so I played against an offensive lineman because I played defensive line. His name was Garrett Myers. He was a graduate assistant at Concordia University Wisconsin at the time, and he recognized my school's logo at the convention. And he said, hey, there's going to be this graduate assistant position open. I'm looking elsewhere. I know kind of who you are. I've heard about you. I'd love to get a chance to connect and go from there. And if the opportunity arises, then, we'll talk further. But that's kind of, just the background story of how I got connected in the college football. I knew from playing at Pomona Pitzer that I wanted to do this for a living. I think, and it goes in a large part due to my head coach, Coach John Walsh at the time, and then my offensive coordinator, Coach Brian Carroll, who gave me several opportunities to, branch out and build a career going forward to do that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome that Coach Walsh kind of empowered you with some, with some responsibilities in the program, and not just, busy work. It sounds like, whenever you were able to give feedback that it was actually truly valued, especially at a young age. So, shout out to Coach Walsh. I don't know him at all, but I think sometimes when you're a young guy and you're just trying to create a bunch of value and trying to do your job, sometimes just that affirmation of they actually care what I'm doing and then they're listening to what I'm saying, that can go a long way. And so, you kind of started the story there about leading to Concordia, and that's where I was getting ready to take this. That first job is always your hardest. It's not the first time I said it on a podcast. It's not the first time most people have ever heard it. So you come to the AFCA convention. I'm curious, especially at probably a low budget program like Pomona Pitzer. How did you get there to the convention? How did you pay for your room? What did you do? What did that first convention look like for you? And share a little bit, because what happens is a lot of times I get head ball coaches on here, and I'm like, hey, tell us about your first experience at the convention. Now I got a coach that's pretty early in his career, so it's probably a lot fresher on your memory than some of theirs. What was that first convention experience like without a job, and everything that kind of went with it?
Oh, absolutely. So, Coach Price, after I got done playing my senior year of college football at Pomona Pitzer, I want to give a huge shout out to what Coach Walsh and what Coach Carroll have done at Pomona Pitzer. First of all, they took a historically losing program and building it into a consistent winning program. And they actually won the SCIAC championship this past season for the first time in 50 years. So I want to give a huge shout out to that. And I don't want to forget about that. But getting started, so I told my parents, my family, that, hey, I want to do this. I want to be a college football coach. And they have this huge convention. They have this giant convention. It's in Nashville. And so my dad said, okay, we can help you with a little bit, but the rest is going to be on your own. Because technically at the time, Pomona Pitzer cannot allow a current student athlete to go. Right. And so what I did to see if this life is real, if I'm really about this life, is I actually started a defensive line academy. So I played defensive line in college football. And at the time in San Diego, there was not really, because that's where I'm from, there wasn't any defensive line trainers around San Diego County. And so I had kind of a side hustle gig, is what you would call it, is I would train current high school players who play defensive line or incoming freshmen that play defensive line, and I would train them. Luckily, from Pomona Pitzer, I got access to gear. I could drive down for a weekend in San Diego, and I actually did fairly well during my defensive line academy, which I held several Saturdays, and it set up a lot of one-on-one and individual basis times to do that. So I was able to raise enough money to do that, and then I got some support from my family, and then they were able to send me off to Nashville, which was a truly great experience. I did not stay at the Gaylord Opryland Hotel. I stayed at a hotel right across the street, so I had to either walk there or get a shuttle there. But I'll never forget that. Obviously, I saw you're there and you're kind of shell shocked, like, oh my goodness, this is Ryan Day. Oh my gosh, this is Gary Patterson here right in front of me. It's pretty surreal experience.
Absolutely.
But again, I didn't know a single soul there. Tried to go to different social events and introduce myself. I was just a lone ranger at the time, and I had to just navigate. I connected with a couple people that I had met at the West Coast Elite camps, or I had connections with, and tried to see, like, hey, do you guys have any openings anywhere? I went to the board to put up my resume. But one of the biggest and best talks I went to was the GA and Career Forum talk. And that's always one of the most popular talks. And I still go to that talk every convention I'm at. And it just really told me the different avenues in which you can get started. Because it's not like being a manager where there's a simple direct path to get there. Or it's not like, hey, if you want to be an attorney, you have to go to law school and then you get to start your own firm and everything like that. No, there's several different paths you can take to, get where you want to be in college football. So.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, I'm happy you had that experience, and I'm happy that you were able to experience that at such a young age. I know some coaches have had on that, it took them a few years in the profession before they either made enough money or either were at a school that was a priority. So, just kind of as a young guy looking, that's an awesome story. That might be one of the first times I heard it on the podcast here. So yeah, you see a rival guy that's on the offensive line. You guys kind of chat up a little bit. How did you end up kicking in that door in that first gig and moving up north to Wisconsin?
Yeah, so it is a crazy time in my life. I'm a senior in college, want to finish up my last semester, and then all of a sudden COVID hits in 2020. And so I remember it like it was yesterday. So I was texting Garrett Myers here and there, back and forth, because he was looking around because he had just finished his master's at Pomona Pitzer. That's who I met at the convention, who played at Claremont Mudd Scripps. And then all of a sudden I worked track meets because I was a student worker. I worked for the athletics event staff at Pomona. And I saw on the scoop that Concordia University Wisconsin was looking for an offensive or defensive GA. And so I was at the pole vault station. We were, if you've ever been to a track meet, pole vault takes a little bit. Yeah. And so I was just on my phone, and hey, I had all my stuff ready, and I emailed it to the head coach, Coach Greg Etter. And then all of a sudden, 2 days later, I got a call and a text from the offensive coordinator at the time, Coach Henny Hemmons, who's now retired. But our school had just been shut down due to COVID. Everyone got told, hey, you need to pack up everything. You need to go home. It's over. COVID has run rampant across the country. We need to pack up and go. And so after talking with Henny Hemmons, I was listening to a couple other opportunities across the country, but I wasn't afraid to move across the country. I actually drove down home, and I remember talking to Coach Henny Hemmons that he really liked me on the interview process, and he wanted to set up another interview with me, getting on the whiteboard. And he said, you're a defensive line guy. We know that's in your background. However, we don't know if the defensive line job's going to come available. You can still interview for the defensive line job, but the open position right now is the running back graduate assistant. And so me, a go-getter, I called Coach Brian Carroll, called every running back coach I could possibly know, and I crammed it all in a couple nights and tried to learn running back for the first time and teach it. And I remember interviewing for the job. This is crazy. So I was at home getting ready to set up for the interview. All of a sudden, the power goes out at my house. No internet, nothing. And so I scramble, try to work something out at my dad's office, try to set up everything. There's this glaring light that was just constantly in my face during the Zoom call. So I had to tape up hoodies or something because the curtains hadn't been set up. So I had to make everything look perfect. I had to install a whiteboard in my dad's office. It's still there to this day, which is pretty funny. And then I interviewed for the running backs job at Concordia University Wisconsin. And Coach Henny Hemmons asked me a set of questions and asked me, can you do this for a living? Do you think this is a path that you can do? I answered him yes. And a couple of days later, I got a call from the head coach, Coach Greg Etter, and he offered me the position. And so I told my family, I accepted it, and I'm moving out to Wisconsin. And so it was really, not a lot was going on in the Heffler household. I mean, we're all sick and tired of living together, but I come from a family of 3 other siblings. So I have a twin sister. I have a younger brother who's going to be a senior at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. He's an inside linebacker there. And then I have a younger brother who's a junior in high school. And so, not a lot's going on. So it was the bright part of their day. And so I had to build a plan together to move across the country, and I did. And, it's the best decision I've ever made, moving out to Wisconsin, because I had never been out to the Midwest except for layover flights in Chicago O'Hare Airport. Right. That's about it. So.
Well, that's I think before the podcast, you're talking a little bit about taking those first jobs early on. I remember being a graduate at Baylor, and I got a job offer at Dallas Episcopal, which is 1 hour up the road. And I was like, man, I'm not ready to pack up and leave. And now, you're talking about moving states and time zones. So I can imagine being a young guy making such a big move. That's not probably going to pay very much, and it's going to definitely work you a lot and all that kind of stuff. Right. So, I've always been a strong proponent for young guys as they're looking for graduate assistant opportunities. I know it's definitely something that is sought after to have the cool logo, the Alabamas, the LSUs, and Baylor's and Texas and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes it's a lot more fruitful, at least from a growth standpoint, to get some of those lower level, the divisional college GA opportunities, because you just get so much responsibility. You get a position, you get to actually get in the car and go recruit and all that kind of stuff. So just real quick, talk about some of the experiences that you had as a graduate assistant, and share, if you feel fine, some of the financials that go in. That's the real part of the profession that sometimes we don't talk about, and how you made ends meet and all that kind of stuff. But talk a little bit about your responsibilities that you had as a GA.
Absolutely. So a graduate assistant at a Division III school, you're a man of many different hats. You have a lot of administrative duties, you have a lot of football responsibilities, and you're the head coach of your position room. So the many roles that I was tasked to do at Concordia University Wisconsin, which is, by the way, beautiful campus. If anyone's not checked it out before, it's an absolutely gorgeous campus, overlooks Lake Michigan. And some of the many tasks I was assigned to do is assisting the on-campus recruiting coordinator. So I'd have to coordinate when all the recruits from across different states or within the states wanted to come visit. I had to make sure the itinerary was set for them, the room was set up. I also was the video coordinator, so I had to set up and write down the film responsibilities for each practice and each day. And so it's a lot of fun. If you've ever been a video coordinator, it's a lot of fun to do. I was also tasked with being assistant recruiting coordinator. So on our main visit days, I would help our wide receivers coach and special teams coordinator, Coach Jeff Walker, set up the rooms and set up the tour guides. Well, I myself was a tour guide, but making sure that everything was working, everything was set up. I was also tasked with helping with travel coordinating. I was also tasked, being the social media coordinator. So I had to make sure all the graphics were looking good and that on Twitter, our program looked the best, to put Coach Etter in quotes. It had to be the best, so I wanted to make sure I did that for him. And then I got to coach the running backs and tight ends, and I was also assistant to the special teams coordinator. And so that really allowed me to get to learn more about the game and also help out. And on some practices, you know, at being a GA, you're tasked with running the scout team. So I had to make sure all the scout cards were correct, everything was correct. Those are some of my many responsibilities as a graduate assistant. And that's on top of going to classes.
Right.
So luckily, with the program I was in organizational leadership and administration. I got to take it online, and I got to accelerate the course as well. So.
Well, that's good, man. That's you know, I think that's important. That sometimes you kind of get a peek of the life of a graduate assistant, and you know, some of those opportunities that you have. You know, although at times it can be a lot on your plate, you just never know when they're going to come back, you know, full circle at some point in time of your career. You know, just some of those experiences. You know,
once a GA, always a GA.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely, man, absolutely. And you mentioned being a video coordinator, and I was at a Division III university. I was at Millsaps College, and I was the receiver coach / video coordinator. I wasn't a GA at the time, but you know, once again, just short staff, so everybody has to pitch in. And you know, I don't think that ever came full circle for me in terms of needing that trade again. But I always respected, you know, those people in that position wherever I went, because I knew how hard it was. Now, so you get this quality time there at Concordia, and you know, I don't know whether you got your degree or not. You can answer that here.
Yeah.
So you got your degree, you finished up your time as a graduate assistant, so now it's time to look for, you know, the next gig, right? Which, you know, those first couple are always a little difficult. So just talk to us about the process to get into where you currently are now, Culver-Stockton, and, you know, kind of how everything went down with that.
Yep, no, absolutely. So I really enjoyed my time at Concordia University Wisconsin. Coach Greg Etter does a wonderful job there. He's been the head coach at Concordia for about 14 or 15 years right now, but he's done an incredible job with that program. And after our last game, when we played Aurora University, I had a difficult conversation, told him, hey, I'm trying to move up the ladder, and I'm finished with my master's. I think this is the right step for me. And he was totally supportive of me, and he wanted to make sure I had everything I needed. He called coaches he knew across the country at different levels, and he wanted me to make sure I was in a right place with the right staff.
Yeah.
But something I learned a long time ago, I forget who told me this, but it's not about who you know, it's about who knows about you. And again, you never know who's watching you. So I learned that when all of a sudden the defensive coordinator at the time, Adam Sawicki at Culver-Stockton College, who is now the defensive line coach at Butler University, he sent an email to me and our staff inviting Concordia to the Culver-Stockton College football camp. It was in July of 2021. And I had reached out, you know, Culver-Stockton College, this seems like an awesome place. I'll go volunteer and work their camp. And Coach Sawicki wanted me to make sure that, hey, I got to run a position during the camp and I got to coach. He wanted it to be a great experience for me. I got there a day before the camp started, and I really meshed with their staff a lot. Their head coach, Coach Tom Sally, who's currently my boss right now, he does a wonderful job with the program, and he cares a lot about the players. And I meshed well with the then offense coordinator at the time, Coach Sean Chase. I got a chance to meet with them and hang out with them the day before. And then the very next day during the camp, we had combine testing set up at the Culver-Stockton camp. We had individual drills set up, and then we had 7-on-7 and then 1-on-1 drills for the offensive and defensive linemen. And on full display, that was the first camp I got to coach at, where college coaches from other programs got to see me full on coach a position group. So I was tasked with coaching the running backs, and the coaches at Culver-Stockton College were fairly impressed, and they remembered who I was. I remember just leaving the Culver-Stockton College camp, and I thanked Coach Sally for his time. I said, I want to stay in touch. This is an amazing campus, because Culver-Stockton is actually a gorgeous setup. It's in a smaller town in Canton, Missouri, but it's a gorgeous campus. You got the fraternities, houses that overlook the football field, new turf and everything. It's a very nice campus. And so I gave Coach Sally my business card, and then all of a sudden, when I was looking for another job, he hit me up when I was actually in Las Vegas during the holidays and was wondering if I was going to be at the convention in San Antonio. And I had other meetings this time around because it was my second convention going around. I had a few different interviews and meetings set up than I did last time I went in Nashville.
Yeah.
And I remember my meeting with Coach Sally. I felt the most comfortable with Coach Sally. I felt like I could be myself around him. And he really sold me on, hey, this is the plan here at Culver-Stockton. This is kind of what we got going forward for our program. And I remember, and it worked out. Everything always works out. Everything always works out. So I was giving my last recruiting talk at Concordia University Wisconsin. And then 2 minutes after I got done with my recruiting talk with recruits, I got a call from Coach Sally, and he said, hey, I want to offer you the job, the full-time job of the wide receivers coach and special teams coordinator. And took about a day to process everything, and then I accepted the job the very next day. So again, another leap of faith, moving out to a somewhat smaller town that I'm not accustomed to because I'm from San Diego and I lived in Milwaukee, two bigger cities, to move out to Canton, Missouri, smaller town, USA. And it's a leap of faith, and I'm so glad I did it. I've got to, build great relationships with the coaches on our staff. I've got to, work with the best kids in the country. I love working and, mentoring our players at Culver-Stockton College. And I've been here. This is going on year 2 now. And it was an excellent opportunity because I knew with Coach Sally is a man of action. He doesn't just say he's going to do things. He does it through his actions. And I don't think he gets as much credit as he should for taking care of the players. He does a wonderful job at connecting for the players. So,
well, your story is kind of a testament about getting in front of coaches. I mean, you did that early on, and you went to the AFCA convention. You got yourself around coaches. You end up running into somebody that you end up with a job. You go down to a camp. This is advice that you probably heard if you listen to enough of the podcasts where coaches are saying, hey, go out and work camps. We're always looking. Right. And, a lot of times you go out to the camps and you don't necessarily see that, but you are kind of living proof that that's a real deal. One of the interesting things I kind of find is, 4 years ago, in 2019, you got your hand on the ground as a 3 technique, or I don't know if you played tackle hand.
5 and 3. So some third down, I was in 3 tech. I wasn't as fast. I was a good player. I wasn't as fast. So.
I got you. So yeah, you got your hand down, engulfed in this defensive line world, and then over 4 years, you've got the opportunity to coach running backs, wide receivers, and special teams coordinator. You took the crash course on running back play prior to that interview. And all of a sudden, you're impressed at the running back position as you're going through the drills there at Culver-Stockton's camp. When do you develop as a receiver coach? When did you develop as a running back coach? When do you take time to say, all right, hey man, I never played this. I never, I'm a football guy. I'm a good coach. I'm a good recruiter. I'm a good this. How do I become a professional wide receiver coach? So, how did you go about developing in some of those positions that you may not have had that much experience in?
Absolutely. So when, I was grappling with the fact that, hey, I got to coach running backs, or, hey, I'm going to coach wide receivers, 2 positions. I was a decent player, but I'm not the most athletic. I had to work for everything as a player.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that helped carry me over to coaching those positions is, as a defensive player at heart, from watching film, I used to study how running backs predetermined what they were doing because of their alignment. If they were spread out a little bit further from the quarterback, it's probably more often than not going to be outside zone. If they're a little bit closer to the quarterback, most likely inside zone or power. Or if they're in pistol, teams percentage-wise will do that. And so I learned to be a student of the game when I was a player. When I had to learn the position, I had to reach out to other coaches that I knew. I reached out to Coach Brian Carroll, who helped me tremendously. And with the resources I had at Concordia University Wisconsin, the coaches were always open to talk football. Coach Henny Hemmond, Coach Jeff Walker, Coach Greg Eder, they wanted me to learn because I'm a reflection of them. And so I made sure I did everything possible to, learn about the position. And also the digital library on the AFCA website, that helps tremendously. And then, YouTube, the internet is always a clever tool. And then on Twitter now, I still use it to this day, seeing different drills are posted every single day. Absolutely. You can go through a timeline, especially with the For You tab on Twitter. You can see exactly. It's like, hey, I really need a receiver drill. And then all of a sudden you refresh your feed. Oh, this is the exact drill we need to work on. And so I really had to, be a sponge for knowledge. I had to go outside my comfort zone, and I had to learn the position from heart. It's like learning the alphabet all over again. And I had to make sure I knew my stuff. And one of the biggest ways in which I improved as a coach was, I give tremendous credit to him, is Coach Sean Chase, who's now the tight ends coach at Butler University. He was the offensive coordinator at Culver-Stockton College. He really helped me learn. The second week I started working there, we went through the entire offense. I wrote down everything, wrote down my notes, and he said, okay, you're going to teach me everything now about receiver. And I'm like, And so he took the time to help me develop as a coach, because the best way to be a great coach is you got to be able to teach it.
Absolutely.
That's how you can really tell if you know it or not.
Yeah.
And so he spent countless hours with me on the whiteboard. He helped me learn, and I can't give him enough credit. He did a wonderful job and helped me grow as a coach. And then also, too, again, networking. I had to reach out to other coaches that I knew, but I also would follow other coaches on Twitter and say, hey, I need some help. Would you be down to talk receiver play or running back play? And it's just what this profession is all about, is other coaches helping out other coaches. And that's kind of how I grew as a running back coach, a tight end coach, and a receiver coach. And the best part about being an offensive coach, I still think about it today, you dictate everything. Defense is all reactionary. Right. So as a defensive player, when I was a player, it was all, okay, they could do this. They haven't shown it on film yet, but they could do this. It's all reactionary. Whereas offense, we get to dictate everything in the game. So
that's right.
I get a level of comfort with that. So
yeah. Well, man, I've enjoyed the time with you, but I do want to ask before I let you go and let you kind of plug in your socials. Now that you've been immersed in the wonderful world of the good guys, I'm a good guy. I've always been on the offensive side of the ball. But now that you've been in that world, do you have any desire to ever return and play, coach on the defensive side of the ball?
Right now, my sole focus is to do a great job at Culver-Stockton College. My goal, and I remember I learned this from my head coach, Coach John Walsh, is be big time where you're at. Mm-hmm. I want to be the best wide receivers coach and special teams coordinator I can possibly be. But at the same time, I like being on the offensive side of the ball because, again, you get to dictate everything. But, 10 years down the line or a few years down the line, I would be comfortable making the switch over to being a defensive coach. Again, I still have much to learn. I still want to be a sponge for knowledge. But at the same time, I wouldn't be against moving to the defensive side of the ball because, you always got to grow as a coach. And I feel the best way to do that is to learn other positions and be able to teach and coach them.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, I appreciate your story, man. If you don't mind, just kind of plug in your Twitter account just so coaches can connect with you, ask questions, all that good stuff, and we'll link that in the show notes.
Absolutely. My Twitter is @coach_Heffler, HEFFLER.
Coach Heffler, best of luck to you the rest of this summer as you roll into the fall. It sounds like I can count on you being at the convention there in Nashville this upcoming year. Does that sound right?
Yes, I'll be back, yes.
All right, man. Well, I look forward to meeting you in person, and best of luck this season, man.
Thank you, Coach Price. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, later, man. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset. If you heard anything on this episode that you would like to learn more information about, head over to afcapodcast.com, where you can find every episode and all of the corresponding show notes. While you're there, take a second to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for the show, please let us know by sending an email to podcast@afca.com. Make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter @InsideTheHeadset and tag it when you share each episode. You can stay up to date with all things AFCA by following the @WeAreAFCA Twitter account. Every episode of Inside the Headset can also be found on your favorite audio streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. If you are not currently a member of the AFCA, be sure to find us online at afca.com and apply to join over 10,000 NFL, college, and high school coaches from around the country who are striving to be the best they can be. With an AFCA membership, you gain invaluable access to the annual AFCA convention, the bi-monthly magazine, and the new and improved digital library, which contains thousands of videos and articles contributed by hundreds of current and former football coaches. You can also visit afcainsider.com to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter on the right-hand side of the screen. It comes out every Tuesday at lunch and is filled with great articles and stories written by many of the same coaches you hear on the podcast. It's geared to help you become a better coach tomorrow than you are today. Be sure to connect with me on Twitter at Coach Mario Price, and remember, the AFCA is not just an annual convention. It is an association that continually promotes education, guidance, and networking. But it is also so much more than that. The AFCA is about celebrating the past and educating the future. It is about developing great coaches who will produce great teams and even better people. So invest in your skill set and impact today by engaging with the AFCA.